So I just came back from a multi-day acceptance and commitment therapy training workshop with Stephen C. Hayes. It was really exciting to meet him in person, to do a workshop with him on how to deliver acceptance and commitment therapy. He, of course, is the researcher, the professor who originally developed acceptance and commitment therapy and has continued to publish all sorts of papers and something like 41 books, something like 500 and something scientific papers. And he's really been a proponent for this form of therapy, which I find incredibly useful. I know a lot of you have been working on, and the evidence shows is an incredibly effective way to get over mental illnesses and just in general take care of your mental health. So I thought I would share some of the ideas from the workshop with you. I'm just going to do two videos, two things that really jumped out to me. The first one here is about values. You've probably heard me talk a lot about how mental health is all about accepting the stuff in your head, not engaging in compulsions, but instead doing the things that you value, doing the things that make you healthy and happy over the long term. But sometimes it can be difficult to identify exactly what are your values. And that's a question that comes up all the time down in the comments. And that's totally understandable, because I know for me personally, when I was dealing with mental illness, many of the things I valued were part of the problem. I was constantly doing things and trying to chase after things that were just driving me into a hole. And so getting out of that hole kind of involved understanding what I actually valued and what I actually wanted to do in life, the things that were actually going to not drive me into a hole, but help me be healthy and help me be happy. So here's a technique that Stephen shared with us. You could turn this into an exercise. That's also just a way of looking at three different areas in your life, or imagining three different things, and from those drawing out what some of your values are. So if you're struggling with values, here's what you can do. So you could grab a piece of paper and you're gonna write down three words on here. So one, sweet. The other word, sour. And then the other word, heroes. And these are the three areas that you could look at to understand your values better. Under sweet, you can write down a story of a time when things were going really well for you. Or maybe you'll just jot down some of the feelings that you were having, the emotions, or what you were doing. Those sweet moments are those moments in our lives when it seemed like everything was going really well. If you were drawing a line to show the ups and downs of your life, the sweet moments are those highs. So really capture some points about that, what you were feeling, what you were doing, right? That's the sweet. And from those, you can probably, without too much work, see some of the things that you value. They're probably right there on the surface. With the other two, it's probably going to require a bit more work. So the sour moments, those are the lows. And they might not be confined to the past. They could be things that are happening all the time. You might look at a sour moment as being anytime you have to do something in a social situation. Right? If you're somebody who struggles with social anxiety, for instance. So under sour there, you might pick a couple of the things that make you anxious, that feel bad, that you don't enjoy, those moments when life does not feel like it's going in the direction you want it to. But here's the little extra piece of work here to pull out the values, because it doesn't just mean that you value, for instance, not being around people because they make you anxious. In fact, if people make you anxious, that is telling you that you really care about people. Look at those sour moments and recognize that they necessarily aren't showing you what you value. They're probably pointing you towards what you value. For example, when people are struggling with contamination issues, so around, say, contamination OCD, they're constantly trying to avoid contamination and get rid of contamination, and feeling dirty makes them very anxious. That does not mean that the thing they value is being clean. There's a step there where we need to dig into why that person is doing that action. Because the reality is, if you dig into why a person is engaging in lots of contamination and cleaning compulsions, you might uncover something like a fear that they're going to contaminate somebody else and be responsible for spreading a disease to somebody else, killing somebody else, causing harm to somebody else, or maybe harm to themselves. So what that's telling you about what they value is that they value other people. They value the lives of other people, and they value their own life. And that's important to pull out, because if you value your life, you probably do not value spending your life on compulsions. We often end up engaging in compulsions because we just don't know any other way to try to avoid that thing that we're afraid of, to try to do the thing that we value. And so much work in recovery is about learning what your values really are, and then learning healthier ways that you can align your actions with those values, recognizing that the things you're doing right now are actually making you miserable and are actually taking you away from the things you value, taking away your life, taking you away from the other people that you love. So that's the sour. And then the last one is heroes. And heroes is all about understanding a hero of yours, so somebody you look up to, and there might be several of them. So for heroes, you really want to capture what is it about that person or those people that you really respect. What is it about them that you also want to achieve in your own life? Capture a story there, write down some points, and you might have to do a little bit of digging here as well, because you can't just say, okay, that person's successful, I want to be successful, therefore I value being successful. Because that doesn't actually teach you anything. The reason we look at these stories about other people, because we actually want to dig into why have they been able to do that thing that you want to do. Because it's those actions that you're actually going to want to value. If you're trying to understand your values at work, I find it so useful to have work values. And what I always tell people when I talk about values at work is, pick somebody in the same career as you that's doing the things you want to do. And then understand how they did that. In the story of how they did that, you're going to uncover the skills and the practices that you can value and you can bring into your everyday life. And that's it. If you're stuck on trying to figure out what your values are, or you're just beginning to get started on that journey of mental health and you want to identify what your values are so you can practice aligning your actions with those values while you accept all the stuff in your head and cut out those compulsions, try that exercise out, just throw it on a piece of paper, or you can just do it in your head, but just mentally thinking about those stories, thinking about those people that you respect, and understanding why you respect that, digging into those stories to understand what do you really care about. At the end of the day, building better mental health and fitness is really about doing the things that you care about. I'm going to share one other video, a concept that came up at the workshops. Check that out next.